Welcome to Rockstar Doctor Life. I'm Melissa Longo, and each episode, my guests and I will bring you fresh, fun ways to rock your life as a health professional and create a business that aligns with who you are and the life you want to live. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Rockstar Doctor Life. I've been trying to book an interview with this fantastic doctor for quite some time, and we finally made it happen. I'm thrilled to have a conversation today with Dr. Monique Andrews. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Melissa. I remember meeting you at CalJam, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And talking about doing a podcast then, so I'm glad it's finally come to fruition.
Yeah, this just means we have more to talk about now.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start with, a lot of listeners know who you are, but let's just get sort of the snapshot version of who is Dr. Monique Andrews, what are you doing these days, and then we'll go into the story of how you got here.
Sounds great.
So what are you up to these days?
What am I up to these days? These days I'm living in beautiful Victoria, BC, and my wife and I started a foundation about 7 months ago, and really it's a chiropractic resource community. And, I think I hate to say these three words together now more than ever. Time where we need community. I think we always need that. But this has sort of been our passion project since we left teaching and moved back to Canada.
Awesome. And before that, you were teaching in academic, circles, but
Yep.
You also had a private practice. So let's go backwards even further. And I'd love to know your story as to how you became a chiropractor.
People always ask me this. It's actually kind of a funny story. I went to Palmer College in Davenport, Iowa, and, the Fountainhead. So when I was there in the late 90s, or I graduated in 2001, everybody was either a fourth generation chiropractor or they had some miracle or there was some big thing. And I was quiet for a long time until I was a student speaker at New Beginnings in New Jersey, I think probably in 1999. And Tamara and I, my wife and I, had never told this story because basically I followed her to chiropractic school. And so lo and behold, we're in this thing and I get up to speak and I tell the whole story about how I came home one day. I was a research associate and she was just finishing her master's degree in neuroscience. And I came home one day and we were sort of deciding what to do. I was all set to go off to McGill to do my PhD in neuroscience. And she was sort of at a crossroads and looking at many things. And I came home one day and she said, I know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, what? She's like, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And without missing a beat, I said, okay, what do I have to do? Because I was just going to follow her anywhere. And that's how I ended up in chiropractic school.
So you two have had that synchronicity in your careers right from the beginning.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, then you practice together. You've had a lot of overlapping work environments, which my first question is like, how does that work with your personal relationship? Because a lot of docs in practice work with their partners. Some don't. Some have amazing situations. Some have challenges. Like, do you have any suggestions for listeners who are working with their partners?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because, we went through chiropractic school together. Luckily, we were in different trimesters. She was a trimester ahead of me. And so we weren't in the same class. But then, of course, we went into practice together. Mm-hmm. And there were times in the beginning where we were like, how are we going to do this? And I wish I had people then, like now, Tamara and I actually coach couples working together to sort of like say, this is how you navigate it. And it was really through trial and error that we figured out how to make it work and, not want to strangle each other at the end of the day. But
right. Really, and still maintain some kind of personal relationship and be out on a date together and not be talking about work.
Yeah. And so that requires being very conscious about setting boundaries, finding roles, and slowly we, figured out, a path. And we came up with this rule, which was number one, if there's a job that requires being done, or a role that needs to be filled, the first question is, do you love doing that? And so whoever loves doing it gets to do it. And if both of you hate it,
find someone else.
It's like, who hates it the least? Or pay someone else to do it. Yeah. I mean, that's how eventually we got a housekeeper and, but literally it's all about being very 100% honest in communication and having clear boundaries and rules. And that's how we got through it.
Yeah, you're speaking my language there. Do what you love. If you don't love it, how can you either not do it or find someone else to help you do it?
Yeah. If you're in a place where you can afford your life and afford to get some help, then do the things you love and pay someone else to do the other shit.
Mm-hmm. So you went into chiropractic school and you graduated, and what happened next?
So we charged forward full of piss and vinegar right into scratch start practice. Okay. Built a beautiful practice, spent way too much money on build out. I remember somebody telling us very early on, one of our mentors, like, don't spend too much money on build out. And then somebody else said, look, it's different in Canada than it is in the US. Like in Canada, in the US, they want the doc with the Mercedes out front. They want to see the successful doc. In Canada, it was more like, you better park that car in the garage. Like nobody, if you want to have a nice practice, build it from the beginning. So that's what we did. We built a practice. We were there for about 13 years. And then we were ready for a shift. And I decided that I was going to leave practice. I accepted a teaching job at a chiropractic college in California. Tamara took a year off sabbatical. We moved to California and we loved it. So after having a really, like a lot of people say, hey, your practice was so successful, why did you leave? And it was like, well, I don't know. We were ready to conquer something else, And so we went from doing to teaching. And we did that for almost 6 years. And now we're kind of back to a blend of doing and teaching. And in fact, my wife, Dr. Mac, is going back into part-time practice starting week after next here in Victoria. So already people from her practice back in Ottawa are reaching out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, it sounds to me like you two are comfortable making change, to go from boom, I'm going to go start a practice and then shift over and go into academic life. Is that something that's come easy to you, or is that something that is a calculated, procedural effort that you make? I mean, a lot of people embrace change and some people are very resistant to it. So I always like to find out what makes it work for you and what made you less fearful.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're not risk averse people. And having said that, we also are we like to plan things. So it's kind of a bit of both. Like we're certainly willing to make a leap from one thing to another. Like we left a very successful, multidisciplinary, multi-doc, like we had about a dozen people working under us at what was then the PRANA group, our chiropractic office. And Tamara also practices as a doctor of functional medicine. And so we had a big machine, making a lot of money. And I think maybe we resist too much comfort. And so the idea we left our, close to $1 million a year practice to move to California, where I took a teaching job for $75,000 a year.
So that tells you something about your values. It wasn't just financial gain. It was like,
we did not go. I did not leave practice for teaching for financial gain. And really it was, I'll be really honest, I was dismayed at what I was seeing coming out of chiropractic colleges. And we both, and it sounds cliche to say it, that we wanted to make a difference, but we actually wanted to help to change the trajectory of what was happening with new grads. And we attempted to do that when we were at the college. And now we are diving in a little bit deeper and maybe a little bit more with a little bit more liberty in our private foundation.
Mm-hmm. So just for those of us listening to that statement, weren't in that culture and environment with you, what was it that you were observing, like with students and the graduates that were coming out of chiropractic school, that was disheartening to you?
Yeah, I think that there's been a real shift away from our values and principles in chiropractic. And a lot of people are always curious to hear that from me. They're like, hey, wait a second, aren't you like into neuroscience and stuff? And how can you be so much into the philosophy? And actually, yes, there is a lot in our principles that is in that metaphysical realm, like innate intelligence, things like that. But the philosophy informs our science. And to have an interest in philosophy and principle doesn't mean that, you spend your days reading green books. In fact, any science is informed by a philosophical construct or initially a belief system that then actually translates into where do we go? What do we explore? You know, our philosophy is necessary, not because it holds us down to an outdated way of thinking, but because it actually, I think, it creates the base and the groundwork for which we can talk about things that we haven't evaluated yet. You know, like it's chiropractic is really unique because we have really metaphysical and really quite physical things. If we think about the science and neuroplasticity and even the science on, you know, posture and things like that, like we're developing some really great, you know, randomized control studies around some of these complex ideas. And then here we are over here talking about this medical physical thing that we can't evaluate. And just because we can't assess something does not mean we can deny its usefulness and its importance. And so for me, I'm always trying to bridge that gap between the two and hold space for both, because I think we can.
And I mean, you obviously, your passion for teaching and bringing those two worlds together has also infused the work that you're doing right now with teaching, you know, doctors how to make science sexy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so where did that come from? I mean, a gap for you in people's understanding about how to apply the neuroscience and make that connection within chiropractic?
Yeah, I think what I often see is doctors making statements that they're kind of mostly true, or it's a great educational tool, but maybe there's not all that science there to back it up. And we get criticized a lot for that in chiropractic as being uneducated and unscientific and not knowing what we're talking about. We do. I hear it all the time, especially from the sort of uber musculoskeletal side of chiropractic. And so for me, I've sort of taken it on as my personal mission, and there are others in the profession that do this, to teach chiropractors, number one, to understand what it is that we do from a scientific perspective, but then also how to talk about it that doesn't get them in trouble.
Right.
You know, like not too long ago, like a month ago, or even a few weeks ago, there were chiropractors in both Canada and the US that got in trouble for making statements about chiropractic and the immune system. And they made a statement that said chiropractic boosts immunity. Now, number one, that's not really true. And we don't have the science to suggest that. But number two, we might not even really want that, because let's take, for example, somebody that has an autoimmune disease. We don't want to boost immunity. We want to help modulate it. Now, we all know that the nervous system controls every cell, organ, and tissue in the body, but the nervous system is probably only trumped in complexity by the immune system, and neither system is understood very well at this point. Is there some science linking a chiropractic impact on the immune system? Yes. Do we have science that says it boosts it? No. And we probably don't want science that says it boosts it, right?
Right.
And so one of the things I've been teaching about recently is what can you say and what can you not say about chiropractic and immunity? Because I want chiropractors not just to understand it, but to be able to speak about it in an educated way. Because, you know, with social media, with access today, even if all of our messages are not going to be the same, at least let's make them right. You know? And so that's kind of my personal mission.
It's supporting the body's inherent functional abilities. You know, that's what I talk about in my practice. Like, you know what, like, I'm not going to tell you, just today, it was like a woman talking to me about her cycles. I said, look, I'm not going to tell you that your adjustments are going to cure anything, but what they're going to do is normalize your internal function and support. And they're not one thing that you can do to support your body. The same way you're going to make sure that you're, you know, connecting with people that you love and drinking enough water and moving your body and eating clean food. And I think that's what most doctors that, you know, listening would appreciate. What took you into neuroscience to begin with before you went to chiropractic school? Where did that passion come from?
Yeah. So actually, when I went off to, an 18-year-old leaving Newfoundland, I went off to Carleton University studying journalism because I was really into writing. I was really into science too. And it was horrible. My first 2 years were a debacle in university, doing things I shouldn't be.
Isn't that for like most of us?
Yeah, I think for various reasons. Will and will not talk about.
Yeah.
And then I got to my third year. I can't believe I'm going to tell this story. And I was down to, okay, I'm going to take a course in psychology and I'm going to take a course in law. This is my third year in my undergraduate. I said, whichever one I get the higher grade in, that's going to be my major. I got a C in psychology and a D in law. And I'm like, all right, psychology it is. So year 4, I start out a brand new psychology program. And by the time I finish 3 years in, I've done a 4-year degree, honors degree in psychology, straight A's, published my undergraduate thesis in stress and neuroimmunology. And I've had a love for neuroscience. That was my undergraduate, ended up being a degree in biological psychology or neuroscience. And then from there, right into a master's degree in neuroscience, and was on a trajectory to do my PhD when I met Tamara.
And wasn't there some addiction counseling in there somewhere too?
So my master's work was in the realm, the neurobiology of stress and reward, and a lot of it revolved around addiction. And so then I did some work after that, like with a local organization, like a women's second stage housing.
You've had quite the journey with academics, but to me, it also, like, you have a lot of different passions that have come together between, your love of writing and neuroscience and psychology and helping people with chiropractic and teaching. And that's a really great story.
Yeah, my undergraduate was actually ended up being a combined biopsychology religion. So I have like that's a whole other realm of my spiritual studies. And
I know you've also been teaching recently some breath work and meditation, and, which makes me want to ask you, you have all this science and you've had this really amazing career still ongoing, but it sounds to me like you have a fairly balanced type of life, and maybe it always wasn't this way, but how do you make time for, Monique, the human being, with all these interests, as well as Dr. Mo, who knows everything about neuroscience? Do you have like rituals or ways that you sort of plan your day or shift time to make your self-care a priority?
Yeah, I'm very clear. I learned from, many, many years in practice, what was the time of day that I wanted to be most productive for other people, and what was the time for me. And what I learned is that I need to take at least an hour, and my day starts with me first. Because if I haven't taken care of me, I can't take care of anybody else. And so my day starts with a ritual of stretching, meditation, breath work. And that's for an hour. That's a non-negotiable. I have I think the only way that we can if you're somebody that is doing a lot of shit in your life, good stuff, and doing work and trying to carve out and make a difference in the world, then number one, you have to make time for yourself, but it has to be non-negotiable. And for me, that I get to start the day that way. And if I have enough time at the end of the day, I'll meditate again. But the one time this happens, no matter what, is my hour in the morning, where this is how I begin my day. Yeah.
It's amazing to me how many times people forget to make that time for themselves. They just get on this roller coaster of like life and family and work, and they lose track of who they are. And I've had so many clients say that to me, like, I forgot who I was for a number of years, and I'm trying to find that person again because they're realizing that there's something out of sync.
I think that's easy to fall into in practice, especially if you're a new doc, or not even a new doc. You're driving your practice. You have all these people you want to take care of. And if you have a family, I have the luxury of not having children to take care of. Maybe it's easy for me to say nobody gets my hour in the morning because I don't have a lot of people demanding that. And so, I have real empathy for, especially moms, trying to drive their practice and their family at the same time. And so my kudos go out to those women. Yeah.
So what's next?
What's next?
Do you have any dreams to get back into any research, to actively conduct any research?
Nope. I love digesting the research. I love talking about the research, but like so many things that sound sexy, bench science, not all that sexy. Very male dominated, very confined, lots of dark rooms. No, because see, for me, I can talk about all different kinds of research. I'm not stuck at only talking about mine,
Right.
So because I have a skill set where I can read about so many different things, I think my gift is in making very difficult things understandable to many, many people. And I think we should use our gifts the way that, what's that Picasso? The purpose of life is to find our gift. The meaning of life is to give it away, or something like that. That I'm a teacher. That's my superpower is I'm a really good teacher.
And did you ever have a time in your life where you weren't as clear on what your purpose and
your gifts were?
Anytime
before 40.
Funny how that happens in your 40s.
It's a thing.
Yeah. Right? Although I think the millennials are doing a little different now. I think they've got, and you would have more experience with working with that demographic, being in the institutions, with academics. But so people who are listening right now, who are trying to figure themselves out, or maybe trying to figure out what they love to do, even in practice, maybe they want to try a new technique or start teaching something new or change their health or change their relationship. What advice do you have for people, and how do you sort of find yourself or get connected with yourself?
Yeah, I think my number one advice is to find a mentor or a coach. You can't do this alone. And, the sooner, I think that when you make yourself accountable to somebody else, it's easier to hold yourself accountable. But it's easy if you don't have that, if you don't have some sort of external force guiding you, then I think it's really easy to put yourself last, especially if you're a mom, you're in practice, you're doing, who knows, all of these different things. It's really hard to give yourself that something. For me, I say that because I've created that discipline in my life. It wasn't easy, like just 2 months ago, I finally hit the first time in my life where I meditated every single day for 365 days. Okay, you know what? I've been meditating for 20 years. It shouldn't take that long to make it, but it was really something that I just came into focus in. And, I have a coach that I work with. I think that if we can it helps to have someone hold us accountable and to help guide,
Yeah. And just to help you get clarity, because we get caught up in our own stories and our own limitations, and someone, whether that's a partner or a friend or a coach or your therapist or some other healthcare professional, someone looking out from the outside looking in can give us a tremendous amount of perspective on where our own limitations are, and also just be our biggest champion.
Yes. Yeah. And remind us to celebrate ourselves and celebrate our victories. And that's something that I do with the people that I work with every single time. Clients I'm coaching, I'll say, what are you celebrating?
Yeah.
And because then they know I'm going to ask them that too. Right. And so they're like, gosh, so maybe they're actually working to yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because sometimes we get so focused on the things that aren't working, or the things that we've missed, or the targets we didn't hit, or your goals for growth, or your weight, or whatever it is. You don't remember all the amazing things you are already doing and how far you've come.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we were to talk about neuroscience and chiropractic, what's your favorite study or your favorite talking point that you love to give doctors? So if someone listening today could be like, oh, that's great, I'm going to start talking about that in my practice tomorrow.
Yeah, so here's my thing. I'm obsessed with the brain, obviously, as somebody who's studied neuroscience. And what I always say is that when you adjust the spine, you change the brain. And if you change someone's brain, you change their life. So there's enough science now. Until the last 10 years, people thought the focus on chiropractic was really from a neurological perspective, what was happening in the periphery. It's like, that it was that pain, that the neurology was really a local spinal thing. Well, what the science tells us now is that you really are changing what's happening in the brain with the adjustment. Studies on brain waves, metabolism, functional connectivity, even genetic studies in animals show us that when you adjust the spine, you change structure and function in the brain in a positive way. So for me, it's like, wow, why do we need to talk about pain? Obviously, you need to meet people where they're at. Most people come to a chiropractor because they have pain. Please tell them the story that it's so much bigger than that. And in fact, even pain itself, our perception of pain happens in the brain, right? And some of the studies are now showing us that the areas of the brain that are impacted are actually those areas that help do things like resolve pain, change sensitivity to pain, but also areas that make us uniquely human, right? Like the prefrontal cortex. So I think that's almost all you need to be talking about right now. There's plenty of studies that show when you adjust somebody, you're actually changing brain function. there's not too many people that would question that the brain controls everything in your body. And so if this is the master control system and chiropractic is a way to positively influence that, that's completely non-invasive, let's get on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that just goes to so many of the directions. And listeners, you know, if you want to connect with Dr. Mo's program, definitely check out the links we have in the show notes, because there's a really great series of videos that she's done. And, you know, she really does try to make science sexy and simple as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Every Monday I produce there's a little black and white post that I put on Instagram and Facebook, and it's a Dr. Mo knows. And usually it's a statement about current research. And then in the post notes, it'll give a link to a research article and that people can read, and there's talking points and stuff like that. And that's free. Anybody can go grab that. Every Monday I post those.
Yeah, that's great. Great resource for your practice, for our practices. So what keeps you so inspired before we wrap up here today?
Yeah, I think mostly it goes back to what I said about I want, you know, for me, I think because I understand the impact that chiropractic has, I really think we have a moral obligation to get everybody under care. And I think my job, you know, as a conduit for chiropractors is to help them understand the potential impact and give it to them in a language that they can use in conversations where they make statements that are irrefutable, that make them, you know, able to deny any naysayer, to handle any objection, and always be on the right side of the science. And they don't have to be, you know, a geek to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. I just want us to, you know, get to our rightful place in the scheme of things as chiropractors. Nobody has what we have, and everybody should have access to it.
Mm-hmm. It's a great way to wrap up our show today. Thank you for your time and your insight. And listeners, definitely check out the show notes. Connect with Dr. Mo, her programs, follow her on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you like to follow and connect with people. I really appreciate our conversation today. I know listeners will find a lot of value as well.
Thanks, Melissa. I really enjoyed our time together.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. Find out more about today's guests and everything else that we talked about in the show notes. You can also find all this content and so much more, including videos, blog posts, and how you can work with me on the Rockstar Doctor Life website. If you haven't yet reviewed the show, we'd love it if you headed on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review about what your thoughts are about future episodes for the show and what you like best. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram at Melissa Longo DC, and of course on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.